I'm getting, so I trust this a lot more. And it really does feel good. Some of those fears come back in and they make me think, what on earth are you doing?
Not being able to say no is like having to write an essay without putting any periods in.
Exactly right. This is going to be a real fun month.
Indeed.
It'll start on August 1st.
Or
more,
it better start right now. I mean, hey, if you make it a special thing to say no to a particular person, then you haven't gotten the idea that saying no is no big deal. And you'll say no half an hour from now if you're asked to do something that it won't work. Or if somebody says, do you like this? And you don't like it, you're going to say no, I don't like it. I don't like that flavor. Or no, I'm not hungry right now. Or no, I'm tired, I need to sit down and rest. Even if it's Paul or Susan that asked you to do something, whom you would be inclined to say yes to. So
it isn't the situation, it isn't my job that's going on here. It's me saying no.
That's right.
Period. It just has only to do with me.
And
me
then,
saying no.
And then, that's right. And then when you learn to say no and somebody doesn't hear it, doesn't act as though they heard it, you say to them, like the t-shirt says, what part of no didn't you understand? In many ways, no is the most powerful word in your language. Mainly because it is so underused. Yes is the more powerful word, but not when saying yes costs you your integrity. Use no, use the word no as the means of preserving your integrity. Unless you can use both of those words equally well, you're not in a position to, well, let's put it this way, if you can't use them equally, you constantly stand in the position of being abused. Not because everyone else is an abuser, but because you, acting unintelligently by not using those words well, will put yourself in positions that allow you to be taken advantage of. And then you say, those bastards, they are so thoughtless. Well, wait a minute, wasn't it thoughtless for you to not say no? Oh dear, I'm the bastard. Yeah, but when you realize you're the bastard, you're where the power is. Because you're the one who can say no or yes well. As long as you put the blame out there on them, how thoughtless they are and how abusive they are. You are powerless to change the situation because it's them, and until they change, you're stuck. When you're the one who's not saying no to their request for that which doesn't fit with you, that which doesn't work, that which violates your integrity. But again, you've got to be a little carefree in your use of the word no. In other words, don't make a big deal out of it. Just start saying no. And don't let the word no be be part of a negotiation.
Yeah, I understand that.
Otherwise, no really means maybe.
If we talk about it a little bit, I'll give a little here and you give a little there, and yeah.
If you don't let another know what your limits are, they won't know what to honor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This should be very interesting month.
I hope so. You deserve an interesting month. You deserve a month in which things change. And change not because you're a mealy-mouthed wimp who's being blown by the prevailing winds of others' opinions, but because you're clear and you've expressed yourself clearly, so that others decide that, well, she's obviously not someone we're going to be able to push around, so we better get rid of her and find someone who will let us push them around. Yeah. And you say, great, sayonara. Glad to leave ya. Because I'm not going to remain here and play into this kind of game.
I really am not. I can't do that anymore.
Good. Mean it. But don't just say bye-bye. First say, I want that office. That was my office. You want me to work in a place at a great distance? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it in an office with a window, and it's going to be the one that was given to me initially. Right. And if you can't do that, then find another toady to push around. This is not arrogance. This is self-respect.
You know, this is the first time I really do see that in a job. I've always thought, you know, there's something wrong with me. Not this time. Now I can very clearly see it is not me. And I can't do this anymore. And it isn't worth keeping.
But you also can't be too sure that it's them until you said the buck stops here.
Right. I understand that.
Good.
I haven't quite done it. I've come close.
Yes. That's why I didn't let you off the hook and say something else.
Good. Thanks.
You're welcome. Self-respect is not arrogance, and self-respect is not self-righteousness. And declaring your limits is not unkind. To express who you are clearly at any given moment gives others the information they need so they can know how to relate to you well. And if they can't relate to you well, their poor behavior will become more noticeable to you, and it will be obvious to you that you need to dissociate yourself and not stay where you are treated thoughtlessly. But before you leave, you provide the opportunity for thoughtful behavior to come into play by stating your needs clearly and unequivocally. You see? You could say that's witnessing for your so-called bad employer, because by being clear, you give that person the opportunity to behave better. You see?
And my fellow employees too.
Indeed. Yes. So this next month may well be a month in which the most wonderful thing that happens is that you breathe easily. You breathe deeply, not breathing up on the edge of the top of your breath, and you feel whole because you haven't sacrificed yourself. You don't feel better than anyone, but wonder of wonders, you don't feel worse than anyone. And then believe that that feeling of being worse than everyone is a valid self-experience, you see. That could be the most interesting part of this coming month. And if you do end up applying for a job somewhere else, you will walk into that job with a clearer sense of who you are and more self-respect. And it'll show to your future employer. And you'll be on the ball during the interview process. And you won't just say yes, yes, yes to everything they offer, because at least they're offering you something. Even though what they're offering you doesn't really feel good, except that you think it'll give you a little bit of security. And so don't sacrifice your integrity for a little bit of security, because at that very point you've disrespected yourself and you've taught your future employer that here's another toady he or she will be able to manipulate and push around. Or it will be an employer who would never push you around, but recognizes the tendency on your part to be pushed around, which would make you, to them, a less desirable potential employee. Because although they may not push you around, who on the rest of the staff might? And therefore she or he would, the employer, would lose your value because you could be swayed easily by a tendency to acquiesce to everybody because you think they're better than you. You see? Intelligence is intelligence, and it oozes out all over the place, and it makes a difference in your experience as well as the experience of those around you. And the less intelligence you express, the more welcome you're going to be in the company of those who express less intelligence. And because you have some degree of intelligence, you'll be miserable there. Until you realize that your whole problem is you haven't learned how to say no. Which is an absolutely fundamental right. Without being able to say either yes or no, you have no freedom. Remember that. If you don't have yes and no equally available to you, you have no freedom. You become the victim of tyranny. That's how fundamental it is. And it's really an inalienable right. So the United States had to say no to England. so that they could subsequently say yes and no to England and everyone else. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You are
Thanks.
welcome. You are welcome. We are going to take a break. Does anyone have a yes, but, or a further comment about the word no?
Were you asking what part of no we don't understand?
Yeah.
I find it most difficult to say no, like to my mother and father. There seems to be some very definitive lines that are difficult to react to, like you react to the postman with, no, this is not my letter. But with family, it is exceedingly difficult to say no because you try so hard to please, and many times you do yourself in. You use the word sacrifice. Why is it okay for some situations in your life and not okay for other situations? There's not a consistent blend. I find myself.
Oh, I'm going to interrupt. Who's determining that in some situations it's all right and other situations it's not?
Well, I guess I'm going on the premise that families, the expectation of honesty within a family unit of a mother and father or grandmother, grandfather, seems to be attached to the supposed tos and because of. You would never treat your mother and father any differently than you'd treat anybody else. You would be more honest with them and less honest with yourself.
But at the bottom line, even though the family unit seems to dictate that in some instances or with certain people it's all right to say no, and with others it's not all right to say no, even though, let us say, you get reinforcement from the family unit, at the bottom line, you are the one making the determination that under this circumstance, I will feel free to say no, and under this circumstance or with this individual, I do not feel comfortable saying no. I'm going to be blunt with you. Grow up. Why? So that you might have an opportunity to relate to your mother and father, adult to adult.
Well, I'm speaking in the past because they've both passed on. But my mother was a very, people would say to me, oh, are you adopted? We can't believe you'd be treated this way as an only child. I mean, it was very debilitating and intimidating to me. And
And so for the sake of the family, you sacrificed yourself.
I
For
think
the sake of not making waves, for the sake of not forcing anyone else to grow and relate to you in a new way, you bit the bullet.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But now I want to find, or I don't know why I adhere this to pain, because I know that's a choice also. I mean, human beings are certainly fragile at all levels of, life. But to find a forgiveness, because I know I carry
I will
around-
tell you something. Fragile people are the most powerful people in the world. People who are fragile are the most powerful people in the world. As long as they have a sucker who will believe them. Fragile people usually have a fist of iron, and they have learned how to manipulate people by pretending to be fragile, and they end up controlling people around them. Why do they do it? Because it works. Because there are enough people around who won't say no to them, that they get constantly served. Whew. So whoever fed you that little bit of bullshit, that people are, really basically fragile, well, 'tain't so. All you have to do is disagree with a fragile person in order to find out how strong they are. They may come on strongly and say, "You'll be the death of me yet." But they won't let you go. They'll just wheedle at you until you finally stop making waves for them because they're so fragile. That's power. You know, in the eve of the house, there are some swallows who come every year. And yesterday, the babies just fledged. And in another 6 weeks or so, the parents will come back and lay another nest of eggs. You think the 4 babies that just fledged today will be welcome? They won't be around. Families nurture and support the growth of new individualities so that they might fledge and leave the nest and not be beholden to it as a baby or an infant or a minor or a dependent again. The whole point is for these individualities to grow and arrive at a point where they abandon dependence. Which means they arrive at the point where when mom says do something, they don't do it. They don't do it because she said to do it anyway. They may do it because it's appropriate, and adult to adult, they're willing to help. There's a point at which a growing individuality has to arrive at a point of taking responsibility for his or her actions instead of letting mom or dad take responsibility for his or her actions, you see? That's healthy. When the capacity to say no is not available to you, it is not healthy. You do not have freedom. I can't make it any more plain than that. You are a servant. And a servant is someone different from someone who serves. A servant is indentured. A servant is in bondage. A servant is obligated to serve. But one who serves, because it's his or her choice to serve, is free. And until you have the freedom to relate to your parents, because it's your choice, you haven't grown up yet. You haven't come into the fullness of the whole reason you had parents.
Well, my father died, but my mother never took it upon herself to call me and tell me that he had passed on. I mean, I feel like there's a space that I'm willing to deal with now, that isn't victimizing, but just finding peace of mind, that there's closure.
Well, it's
without
simple.
responsibility.
You know what?
blame.
It's simple. She didn't know any better, and you didn't know any better. But at any moment, you can know better. And you can forgive yourself, and you can forgive her. And move on with closure. And with the new perspective that you have, you will be free not to play into similar dynamics with others whom you have determined it's not appropriate to say no to. You must be able to say no and yes to everyone and mean it. Do you hear that? You must be able to say no and yes to everyone and mean it. And stand with your no or yes, whether they like it or not. Because when you are saying no or yes, you are being clear, and when you're being clear, other people can relate to you really. It cuts the game playing crap. And everybody, in the end, appreciates the absence of game playing and manipulation. And if they don't, it means they are addicted to the game, and you don't want to be around them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment related to that topic? Okay, well then, new questions?
Sort of related.
Okay.
It's related, I guess, in the way that all of our questions are always related. When I really feel the clarity of what you're saying about yes and no, and I really feel that I think I'm at a point in my life, maybe just because I'm getting old enough to recognize it, or that I want to be learning how to do that, and that it feels good to do that. And I've labeled myself as being indecisive. I've found in my life experience that I tend to be really wishy-washy. And that kind of came up a year ago.
Well, nobody can put their finger on you that way, right? They can't quite nail you down.
Yeah, and it's dumb, It's, for me, it doesn't feel good to me either. And I guess what I'm finding now is, how do I